Caleb Brooks never intended to spend the night in one of his own hotels. After nearly 4 months overseas negotiating a major expansion for his hospitality company, all he wanted was a warm shower, a comfortable bed, and a quiet night with his 9-year-old daughter before driving home the next morning. Their flight had been delayed twice, baggage claim had taken forever, and by the time they pulled away from the airport, the clock was edging toward midnight. His daughter Ava had fallen asleep long before they reached the city. She rested peacefully against his shoulder, one arm wrapped around a faded brown teddy bear she had owned since she was 3 years old. Caleb carried her effortlessly as he stepped through the revolving doors of the luxurious Crescent Royale Hotel. The hotel sparkled exactly as he remembered. Soft golden lights reflected across polished marble floors. Classical piano music floated gently through the lobby. Fresh lilies decorated crystal vases near the reception desk, filling the air with a subtle fragrance that always made arriving guests feel instantly relaxed. Caleb had personally approved every detail years ago. The Crescent Royale wasn't simply another hotel. It was the flagship property of Brooks Legacy Hotels, the company he had built from a struggling roadside inn into one of the country's fastest-growing luxury hospitality brands. Tonight, however, he wasn't visiting as the company's founder. He wore an old charcoal sweatshirt, faded blue jeans, simple sneakers, and a baseball cap. He intentionally dressed this way whenever he made surprise visits to his hotels. His late grandfather had once told him something he never forgot. If people only treat you well after they know your title, they were never treating you well at all. Those words had shaped the entire philosophy behind his company. Every guest mattered. Every person deserved respect. No exceptions. Caleb quietly approached the reception counter while carefully supporting Ava with one arm. Behind the desk stood a sharply dressed receptionist wearing the hotel's navy blue uniform. His name tag read Brandon. Brandon glanced up. His eyes moved across Caleb's hoodie, then to the sleeping little girl, then to the worn teddy bear, finally back to Caleb's face. Something subtle changed. Not anger, not open hostility, just instant judgment. "Good evening," Caleb said politely. "I'd like a room for tonight." Brandon hesitated before forcing a professional smile. "I'm sorry, sir." His tone sounded rehearsed. "This property doesn't usually accept late-night walk-ins." Caleb remained calm. "I only need one room." Brandon barely looked at his computer. "I believe we're completely booked." Caleb nodded thoughtfully. "Would you mind checking again?" Brandon pressed a few random keys before looking back up. "I'm afraid there's nothing available." Caleb thanked him anyway. He had learned long ago that someone's character usually revealed itself during ordinary conversations. This felt like one of those moments. Before he could say another word, the lobby doors opened behind him. An elegantly dressed couple entered laughing together. The man wore an expensive tailored suit. The woman carried a designer handbag and diamond earrings that sparkled beneath the chandelier. Brandon's entire posture changed. His smile widened immediately. "Good evening. Welcome to the Crescent Royale." The warmth in his voice hadn't existed 30 seconds earlier. "Do you happen to have a reservation?" The man shook his head. "No. That's perfectly fine," Brandon replied cheerfully. "Let me see what we have available." Within moments he located a luxury king suite. He processed their payment, printed their keycards, recommended breakfast, explained the spa hours, and wished them a wonderful stay. Caleb watched every second without interrupting. The contrast required no explanation. Ava shifted slightly in her sleep. "Daddy!" Her sleepy voice barely rose above a whisper. "Are we here?" "We're here, sweetheart." She smiled without opening her eyes. "Can I sleep now?" "Soon." He gently kissed the top of her head before turning back toward the counter. "I'd like to speak with the manager on duty." Brandon's smile faded. "One moment." A short phone call later, the night manager emerged from a nearby hallway. His name tag identified him as Victor Collins. Victor approached confidently, already wearing the expression of someone who believed he understood the situation before hearing a single word. "Good evening." His tone remained courteous but distant. "My receptionist explained that we have no rooms available." Caleb nodded. "He also rented one to guests who arrived after I did." Victor folded his arms. "Our employees are trained to exercise professional discretion." "I see. There isn't anything further I can do." Caleb studied the manager carefully. He remembered countless conversations with his grandfather, who had worked maintenance in luxury hotels decades earlier. His grandfather rarely complained, but he often spoke about invisible judgments, people deciding who belonged before saying hello, doors opening quickly for some people, remaining closed for others. Caleb had promised himself those stories would never be repeated inside buildings carrying his family's name. Yet here he was, standing inside his own hotel, watching history quietly repeat itself. He decided not to reveal his identity. Not yet. He wanted to understand how deep the problem reached. "May I have your full name?" Caleb asked. Victor seemed surprised. "My name is Victor Collins." "Thank you." Caleb repeated the name quietly, committing it to memory. Instead of leaving, he walked toward a seating area near the fireplace. He gently lowered himself into a leather chair without waking Ava. The lobby remained peaceful. Guests chatted softly. The pianist continued playing. Employees moved naturally through the room. But Caleb noticed something else. Several staff members had clearly witnessed the interaction. A concierge standing across the lobby glanced toward him repeatedly before quickly looking away whenever their eyes met. A bell attendant appeared uncomfortable. Even one housekeeper paused briefly while pushing her cart before continuing down the hallway. People knew something wasn't right. Nobody spoke. Caleb wasn't angry. Not yet. Mostly he felt disappointed. This hotel represented everything he believed hospitality should be. Tonight it represented something entirely different. He rested one hand gently on Ava's shoulder while quietly observing the room around him. Without realizing it, everyone present was about to become part of a night that Brooks Legacy Hotels would remember for years to come. Caleb had been sitting quietly for less than 10 minutes when he noticed Victor watching him from across the lobby. The manager wasn't pretending to be discreet anymore. Every few moments, his eyes drifted toward the father and daughter seated near the fireplace. He whispered something to Brandon behind the front desk, then folded his arms once again. The atmosphere inside the lobby slowly began to change. Guests who had been enjoying late-night drinks lowered their voices. A businessman reading a newspaper glanced over the top of the page. A young concierge named Elena organized brochures that clearly no longer needed organizing. Everyone sensed the tension. No one wanted to become part of it. Caleb had witnessed scenes like this before. Sometimes in airports, sometimes in restaurants, occasionally in hotels he didn't own. People often recognized unfairness long before they found the courage to acknowledge it. Ava continued sleeping peacefully against him, completely unaware of the quiet drama unfolding around her. Finally, Victor walked across the marble floor with measured confidence. He stopped directly in front of Caleb. "Sir," he said politely, "I've allowed you a few minutes to rest, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave the property." Caleb looked up calmly. "I haven't disturbed anyone." Victor kept his expression firm. "This is private property." "So is every hotel," Caleb replied evenly. "I've simply asked for a room." Victor's patience began slipping. "My staff has already explained our position. And your position changed rather quickly for another family." Victor ignored the remark. "I'm asking you to leave." Caleb met his eyes. "Or what?" Victor hesitated for only a second. "I'll have security escort you out." Caleb nodded once. "If that's your decision, then please call them." The manager seemed almost surprised by the response. Within moments, 2 uniformed security officers entered the lobby. Both men approached professionally, though neither looked particularly comfortable. Before either of them spoke, Ava slowly opened her eyes. She blinked several times, rubbing one eye while clutching her teddy bear. "Daddy! I'm here, sweetheart." She looked around. 2 guards, the manager, the receptionist, the guests quietly watching. Her young face filled with confusion. "Are we leaving?" Caleb smiled gently. "I'm not sure yet." She turned toward Victor. "Mister." She paused, reading his name tag. "Why don't you want us here?" Victor looked uncomfortable. "It's not that, young lady. It feels like that." Her innocent honesty landed harder than any accusation. Several guests looked away. One of the security officers shifted his weight awkwardly. Ava continued. "My daddy said hotels help tired people." She hugged her teddy bear tighter. "We're tired." No one answered immediately. Caleb gently squeezed her shoulder. "You've done nothing wrong." "I know." She nodded. "I just don't understand." Neither did many people watching. Victor cleared his throat. "This conversation is over." He looked toward the guards. "Please escort them outside." The older security officer took one cautious step forward. "Sir." His voice carried respect rather than authority. "We'd appreciate your cooperation." Caleb stood slowly, making sure Ava remained comfortably beside him. He offered the guard a small smile. "I understand you're simply doing your job." The guard gave a nearly invisible nod. He appreciated being treated with dignity. Several guests quietly lifted their phones. No one made a scene. No one shouted. They simply recorded. Father, his little girl, a teddy bear, 2 security guards, a hotel manager. Caleb reached into his pocket and removed his phone. He selected one contact. The call lasted less than a minute. "I'm at the Crescent Royale." Brief pause. "Please meet me in the lobby." Another pause. "No." Caleb glanced toward Victor. "Don't warn anyone." He ended the call. Ava tugged gently at his sleeve. "Who did you call?" "A friend." "Is he coming?" "He is." Victor sighed impatiently. "I'm asking you one final time." Before Caleb could answer, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. 3 executives stepped into the lobby. Leading them was Daniel Mercer, president of Brooks Legacy Hotels. He had clearly arrived in a hurry. His tie wasn't perfectly straight. His jacket remained unbuttoned. The moment he spotted Caleb, he walked directly across the lobby. Every employee watched. Every guest watched. Daniel stopped several feet away before speaking. "Mr. Brooks." His voice carried unmistakable respect. "I sincerely apologize for what you've experienced tonight." The lobby became perfectly silent. Brandon stared without blinking. Victor's face slowly drained of color. The security officers exchanged confused glances. Daniel turned toward everyone gathered nearby. "I believe everyone deserves an explanation." He gestured toward Caleb. "This is Caleb Brooks. He founded Brooks Legacy Hotels. He owns this hotel. He personally established the service standards every employee is expected to uphold." No one moved. Even the piano music suddenly seemed far too cheerful for the moment. Ava looked from Daniel to her father, then back again. "Daddy," she whispered. "He's talking about you." Caleb smiled softly. "Yes, sweetheart. You built this place." "I did." Her eyes grew wide. "Really? Really?" She looked around the magnificent lobby with fresh amazement. "So?" she asked thoughtfully. "This is kind of like your house." Several guests couldn't help smiling. "In a way," Caleb answered. Daniel finally faced Victor and Brandon. His expression remained calm. But everyone understood its seriousness. "I want both of you to remain exactly where you are." Neither man spoke. Neither man moved. Caleb slowly looked around the lobby. He wasn't enjoying the moment. There was no satisfaction in exposing people. only sadness that it had become necessary. His grandfather had dreamed of places where every traveler felt welcome. His company had been built to make that dream real. Tonight had revealed how easily a mission could fade when people stopped remembering why it existed in the first place. Caleb knew the hardest conversation of the night was only beginning. The silence that settled across the Crescent Royale felt heavier than any speech. No one reached for a phone. No one whispered. Even the soft music drifting through the lobby seemed distant now. Caleb Brooks stood with one hand resting gently on Ava's shoulder while Daniel Mercer faced the employees gathered near the reception desk. Daniel took a slow breath. "Before anyone says another word," he began, "I want everyone here to understand that tonight isn't about whether Mr. Brooks is the owner of this hotel. If he had been any other father traveling with his daughter, the standard of service should have been exactly the same." His words lingered in the room. Caleb nodded slightly. "That's the point," he said quietly. "It always has been." Victor swallowed hard. "Mr. Brooks, I'd like the opportunity to explain." Caleb looked at him without anger. "I'm listening." Victor lowered his eyes. "I made assumptions. I believed I was protecting the image of the hotel." Caleb answered gently. "The image of a hotel isn't protected by turning people away because of how they look." Victor had no response. Brandon stepped away from the reception desk. His confidence from earlier had completely disappeared. "I followed what I thought was expected," he admitted. "I judged you before I even greeted you properly." Caleb studied the young receptionist for a long moment. "Do you know what disappointed me most tonight?" Brandon slowly shook his head. "You never asked how my daughter was doing." The young man glanced toward Ava, who still held her teddy bear tightly against her chest. Caleb continued. She had spent almost 14 hours traveling. She was exhausted. One simple question, "Is she all right?" would have shown more hospitality than every polished sentence you delivered this evening. Brandon's shoulders dropped. "I'm sorry. I believe you are." Caleb turned toward the guests who had quietly witnessed everything. "I also owe all of you an apology." Several people looked surprised. This lobby should always be a place where people feel welcome. Instead, many of you watched someone being judged unfairly. That's not the experience anyone should have inside one of our hotels. A middle-aged woman stepped forward. "For what it's worth," she said, "I almost spoke up." Caleb smiled kindly. "Next time do." The woman nodded. "I will." Those two simple words carried more promise than any formal statement. Daniel looked toward Victor. "As of this moment, you're relieved of your duties pending a full review." Victor accepted the decision with a quiet nod. He understood there would be no argument capable of changing what had happened. Turning to Brandon, Daniel continued. "You'll report to the company's hospitality development program beginning Monday morning." Brandon looked confused. "I'm not being dismissed." Caleb answered before Daniel could. "Everyone deserves accountability." He paused. "But not everyone needs to lose the opportunity to become better." Brandon blinked rapidly, clearly fighting emotion. "I won't waste it." "I hope you don't." Caleb then looked across the lobby until his eyes met Elena's. Throughout the evening she had remained attentive, quietly observing, unable to overrule her supervisors but obviously troubled by what she witnessed. "Elena." She stepped forward. "Yes, sir. I noticed something tonight." Her expression became uncertain. "You watched carefully. You were concerned for our guests, even when you couldn't change the situation yourself." She nodded. "I wanted to help." "I know." Caleb smiled. "Starting next month, you'll join our leadership training program. We need supervisors who understand that kindness isn't a policy. It's a habit." Elena covered her mouth in surprise. "Thank you." "No," Caleb replied. "Thank you for caring." The tension inside the lobby slowly dissolved. Employees began breathing normally again. Guests relaxed. Conversations quietly resumed. For the first time that night, the hotel began to feel like itself again. Ava tugged lightly on her father's sleeve. Daddy. Yes, sweetheart. She looked around thoughtfully. Everybody seems happier now. Caleb chuckled softly. They do. Because people told the truth. That's part of it. She considered his answer carefully. My teacher says being kind is free. Caleb smiled. Your teacher sounds very wise. Ava grinned proudly. I think so too. Daniel walked over carrying 2 room keycards. Your suite is ready whenever you are. Caleb accepted them. Thank you. Daniel hesitated. I promise you, we'll make sure tonight becomes a lesson throughout the entire company. I know you will. The following week, every Brooks Legacy Hotels property held mandatory meetings focused not on luxury service, but on human dignity. Employees discussed unconscious bias. They practiced greeting every guest with warmth before making assumptions. Managers were reminded that leadership meant protecting people, not appearances. The story of one tired father and his little girl spread quietly through the company. Not because the owner had been involved, because the lesson mattered. Months later, Caleb returned to the Crescent Royale for another surprise visit. This time he entered through the same revolving doors wearing ordinary clothes once again. No announcement, no entourage, just another traveler. Before he reached the reception desk, a smiling employee approached. Good afternoon, she said warmly. Welcome to the Crescent Royale. My name is Elena. How may I help you today? She looked at his face. Not his clothes, not his shoes, not the watch he wasn't wearing. Simply him. Caleb smiled. I'm just checking in. We're happy you're here. The words were simple, but they were genuine. Across the lobby, Ava watched another family arrive with 2 sleepy children and far too many bags. Without hesitation, staff members hurried over to help. One employee knelt to speak kindly to the youngest child. Another offered bottled water to the parents. Within minutes, tired expressions had turned into relieved smiles. Ava slipped her hand into her father's. Daddy. Yes. She pointed toward the family. That's what you wanted, isn't it? Caleb watched as the parents thanked the staff and followed them toward the elevators. A quiet sense of peace settled over him. Yes, he answered. That's exactly what I wanted. The greatest luxury any hotel could ever offer wasn't marble floors, sparkling chandeliers, or expensive suites. It was making every guest feel seen. Every guest feel respected. Every guest feel welcome. Because true hospitality begins long before someone receives a room key. It begins the moment they walk through the door.